Now it's time for one of the most exciting and most anticipated segments for us here at FreightWaves, our FreightTech 25 Awards. And the FreightTech 25 presents an opportunity to highlight the best and the brightest innovating companies in our industry. And this award was birthed before the COVID-19 pandemic, which can be argued to be some of the most disruptive years in the industry. 2020 birthed those ideas, 2021 saw those ideas turn into rising star companies, and then the market downturn of 2022 was a little bit of a reality check for some of those folks. This year's top 25 is quite the shakeup. 17 companies are making the list for the very first time. That's almost 70% of our list, Craig. And we're very, very excited to be here and to have HHM to go ahead and who narrow down this list. The top 100 that we released this fall came from nominations to you guys. Once we got that 100, we handed it off to you guys. This is Becca Dennison. She's one of their CPAs. And we had no hands in it. It came all from you, right?
Yeah, so HHM was completely responsible for administering the survey to the voters and then, compiling those results and independently of FreightWaves. So.
One of the things that I think is really important, Kaylee, and to the audience to know this, is that we take a lot of pride in the fact that this is an independent process. Now, I used to not see the list before, but in preparing the logistics and getting the information about the companies over the last couple of years, I've got an advanced list. One of the things that's really interesting about this list is just how different this list looks in past years. This is a really interesting sort of change in how people perceive companies. I think it's an interesting sort of momentous. It feels like we are past the venture cycle.
Right.
If you think about the venture cycle from 2015 to really 2022 in freight, sort of that first stage, we're largely past that, it feels like. And what's interesting about this list is how different it is than past years. A lot of new names, and a lot of names that have been on the list for many years did not make the list this year. And because this is an independent process, we use an independent accounting firm to actually go out and tally the results. It is fascinating how the perception of these various companies has changed and evolved over time.
Absolutely. So I think with that, we just get started, and we can talk a little bit about how you think that the market conditions, or as that perception, as you mentioned, has changed.
One more thing I want to point out before we do that is this. One of the questions I asked when we saw the list, because it is such a change from what we've seen in the past, is, did we have fewer voters this year? This is actually the largest number of voters that submitted ballots in our history. So this is a bit more of a more democratic, if you consider more people voting Democratic. Remember, the voters are selected from key folks in the innovation system. They're C-level executives, they're venture capitalists, they're analysts, they're bankers. They're folks that we have asked to participate in the voting process. This works a lot like the Heisman or the AP college poll in college football, where everyone's ranking from 25 to 1, and ultimately that's how they're selected.
So we're going to go in that order as well, 25 to 1 to break it down, starting off with 25 through 21. Coming in at 25, AIT Worldwide Logistics, new to the list. Global Freight Forwarder, they've been around for over 40 years, and this is their first time making the FreightTech 25.
They were a customer of mine at US Express when I was running on-demand expedite, and we ran their line haul network. So it's sort of exciting to see, for me, a company that was an old school company when I worked with them, that has gone out over the last couple of years and really scaled up quickly.
Really innovated in their technology, obviously, to make the list. Number 24, Isaac Instruments coming in. Again, all of these first 5, brand new. And they do fleet management solutions, integrative ELDs. Talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a fantastic management team that has come from the industry, has been innovative. This is something that they've really focused on, continuing to create technologies and solutions that the industry needs. More on the sort of hardware side of the phase. We'll see a lot of software companies on this list, but they're really focused on the hardware, intelligent hardware, if you will.
Yeah, so number 23 coming in with Good Ship. And I think this is interesting because it's a little bit of that addition onto your TMS, right? These bells and whistles that kind of get added on separately.
Their focus is contract pricing among shippers. And so they're focused on improving the operations and the efficiency of buying freight or selling freight, and really focused in that contract price parts of the ecosystem.
You've got ISO Technologies, Isometric Technologies coming in at 22. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, look, carrier scorecarding, thinking about, so much of the decisions, we think about price. Chris and I talked about price. Price is only one component in a routing guide, and they're thinking about how do we create rating systems, essentially. I think the FICO score is what they
Yeah.
pride themselves in. It's funny because like I know isometric technologies, they go by ISO now, and so last night I was like, what is ISO? But that's clearly how they're sort of thinking of it.
Everyone wants to know how good of a quality of service can I get, not
Yep,
just
absolutely.
am I getting the right price. Coming in at number 20 to round out our first five, we've got FetchGo as well. Last mile visibility, everybody wants that.
It's hot. I mean, like COVID taught us how important deliveries are to our homes. As someone who was building a house during the midst of COVID, I know how painful it was to get stuff delivered dependably. This is obviously a very hot area.
Absolutely, you can tell because they made that top 25. All right, moving on to 20 through 16. Coming in at number 20, this one was a tie, but we've got ArcBest, again, new to the list.
Well, it is. I believe it's been on the list before. I may be wrong about that.
Brand
but they have
new,
certainly
this
been.
is their first time.
Okay, well, congratulations to ArcBest for making the list. I mean, look, this is a company that has been around for decades. It's sort of an old godfather of the LTL business. And it's interesting over the last couple of years, they've significantly invested both in brand and in technology. They bought Molo, part of their business, but they've also made a number of investments internally into their systems.
So we love seeing that make the list. Coming in at number 19, we've got Descartes joining us. And this one, again, new tech platform. They cover basically every part of supply chain analytics.
What's really interesting about Descartes is a lot of its innovation is in the M&A front, is they have gone out and identified sectors of the freight economy and freight tech that they want to be a participant in. And while they do some internal innovation, a lot of it is acquiring businesses that create a better ecosystem for their core products and really going out and helping those companies scale.
So coming in at number 16, we've got our first returner to the list, Gatik. And we know, of course, they're focused on middle mile autonomy, actually making legit middle mile autonomous runs in Northwest Arkansas. They've been doing that for about a year and a half now. Dropping one spot, but still making it into that top 25.
I think back to 2018, we first did this. There were something like 5 or 6 autonomous trucking companies. So it's interesting how that autonomous space, the autonomous bubble, has largely burst, but Gatik has continued to show up on the list.
And they show up again and again. Coming in at number 17, we've got Bitfreighter there, new to the list as well.
Yeah, look, I think ultimately when we think about all of the innovations that are happening around the industry, is there's all these different technologies that are serving different parts of the ecosystem, and this is an example of that.
Then number 15 is technically a tie, so this is 16, but shared with space 15. JB Hunt Transport Services, making the list once again, losing 8 spots though, falling.
Look, I think this has been a difficult year for asset-based companies, period. And I think certainly we've seen this, a lot of focus on optimizing businesses. One of the things that I think is a sort of a trend that as a sort of apparent to me is we're moving to a sort of a different generation of freight tech and how we're thinking about it, new technologies, new ideas. JB Hunt, in many ways, sort of I was having a conversation with them here on their new intermodal quantum product, and it's almost as if it feels like, hey, we're going to invest in things to sort of re-accelerate the next generation. So I think a lot of this is just a testament to a lot of JB Hunt's innovation, while very broad, a lot of the sort of last generation was focused on the JB Hunt 360 app, and I think what we'll see throughout this list is the digital brokers and digital matching systems are not getting as much love from our voters this year.
So JB Hunt has made the list all 5
But we'll see
years
if they
of its
will love
existence.
intermodal next year when we look at the list.
There we go, exactly right. So moving on to 15 through 11, coming in at 15, tied with JB Hunt, you got Einride there, new to the list. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's autonomous trucking. So Einride is another autonomous vehicle company. And so it is one of the few survivors of that. We'll see if there are more.
Coming in at number 14, you've got Better Trucks on the list. Again, brand new, next day Parcel.
Yeah, look, I think Parcel's obviously a hot. What they're doing is in many ways a term almost what we call zone skipping, is they're essentially consolidating. This is an old school process with a new company. Zone skipping is one of the more foundational parts of freight. It was something we did back 30 years or 20 years ago when I was in the business. A lot of my customers were in the zone skipping business, and this is interesting how, again, I think there's a really interesting trend that I'm seeing is we're sort of going back to some of the more traditional technologies and thinking about new companies that are doing different things a bit more innovative.
So coming into 13, we've got Arrive Logistics, and they've made the list before. This is the same spot as they were at last year, and the first brokerage making the list.
Yeah, it's interesting because Arrive never pretended or positioned itself as a digital upstart. In fact, one of its things that its founder said is, we're not huge in the initial phases of technology. We're focused on culture, building our teams. They have invested in technology over time and in data science. But if you ask them what they have done well, it's about culture. And they've stayed true to their form, and the judges continue to reward them.
They move in technology through silence, and sometimes it pays off a little bit, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I
Arrive.
think not so much silence, but I think they're very explicit about their business model and what drives success, and they've stayed consistent in that.
And there we go. They make 13 again. Coming in at number 12, down 7 spots from last year, but still on the list, we've got Kites.
Visibility. Visibility's been hot for the last couple of years, and so this is a company that is one of the leaders in visibility services, and I think this is an important component, certainly a primary beneficiary of the COVID economy, because people realize, I need to know where my stuff is, and so identifying the supply chain, Kites has certainly benefited from that part of the cycle.
And then yet another returner. This block was full of them. We've got My Carrier coming in at number 11, down 1 spot from last year, pushing them just out of the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, LTL, My Carrier has an LTL platform for procurement. It has sort of recently come on the scene, but one of the things I think is interesting, a little combination of what Andrew Leto and I talked about is, in some of these companies, you have people who have been a part of this industry for many, many years. And My Carrier has a very robust management team that's enabled them to continue to build and innovate.
So we're into the top 10 now. People are getting close to that number 1 announcement. And again, top 10, a bit of a shakeup. Coming in at number 10, we've got ChargePoint talking about building out EV charging networks. Of course, very hot topic in the space.
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. We can have all the electric vehicles in the world. If we can't charge them, it's not going to make much difference. And I think ChargePoint is trying to create that infrastructure that enables charging.
We've got FedEx coming in at number 9, up 11 spots. They've made the list 4 out of the last 5 years.
I'm excited to see this, and I tell you, when I was a young boy, Fred Smith was my hero. I wanted to build the next FedEx. I've always loved it. It's fun to see FedEx, who has had some challenges in over the last decade, has really come on strong. A lot of acquisitions, some of those didn't work as well as they hoped, but it's interesting to see how the judges are certainly rewarding some of the recent investments FedEx has made in this business.
Absolutely. They've done a really good job of kind of rewriting that narrative over
It has. And look, it's a new generation for FedEx's leadership, and we heard that from Ramona the other day.
Absolutely. Coming in at number 8, we've got Blue Yonder. Again, another returner, up 3 spots this year.
Like Blue Yonder, we were talking back, is they do a lot of stuff.
So many things.
But this is a foundational part of the ecosystem. If you ask me to put one word, it's ultimately it's a TMS system, but it has a lot of components to it.
Brand new to the list. Coming in at number 7, Highway. You're going to speak with Jordan Graft a little bit later. Obviously, fraud is basically the hot button issue in the space right now.
Load board fraud is a massive, massive issue. Highway is creating technologies that make that process, identifying who those bad actors are, and helping empower companies to mitigate it. Jordan and I are going to talk about load board fraud and what it means for their business, but also what it means for the industry.
You're going to have to ask him his thoughts about being this high on the list for the first time.
I will ask him. In fact, it's the first he's been on the list.
There you go.
Although Jordan, through TriumphPay, has certainly been here before.
Absolutely. Coming in at number 6, we've got Breakthrough.
Yeah, look, Breakthrough is a really interesting company. And one of the things I'll point out is that Breakthrough is a company that's been around for many, many years, 2 decades. And it's new to the list. It was actually an early investor in FreightWaves. We have never done any real business collaboration. In fact, they have products that compete with us in some cases. It's sort of a proof point that we don't get to pick who's on the list, the judges do. But certainly, their core business is really focused on the fuel surcharge and visibility. Fuel's hot. They've also invested in carbon. You think about fuel and carbon go hand in hand. And that is really what they're focused on, is bringing visibility into the costing side of it, particularly around the cost of transportation and fuel related to fuel surcharges.
So now we're going to move into that coveted top 5, and you mentioned companies who might be a little bit of a competitor. But
Again,
Green Screens
this is
AI.
an example of we didn't pick the list. I did warn our sales team, our Spencer, my CFO, last night. I said, hey, the list is interesting. But this is an example. Look, Green Screens has certainly come on the scene, focus on helping companies manage their pricing, particularly in the broker. They've created a really nice piece of technology that helps those small, medium-sized brokers sort of optimize their own costing for freight rates, and certainly some innovation. I think Breakthrough and Green Screens are very interesting. Again, examples of companies that sort of in this broader competition, but data is hot. Now, Sonar can't make the list. My team is going to be mad they're not on the list, and other companies are. But the reality is, I think what the voters have told us is that data and data intelligence is very important. So the Sonar team should take that into consideration.
There you go. You heard the man right there. All right, up next, number 4, Best Pass, also new to the list. Talk about hassle-free toll management. Is this maybe a sign that people are really caring about the quality of life for their drivers?
Absolutely.
Talking about ease of drive.
If we learned anything in COVID, is that drivers are very difficult to find and retain. And I think, and also moving cargo and the velocity of freight movement is really important. And look, nobody wants to be stuck at a toll road. I mean, at a toll station. So like, dealing with that is there, but also just moving through toll roads and making it efficient is really important.
Coming in at number 3 on the list, we have Philogic. And this is interesting because you're talking about retail management, kind of the e-commerce space. Consumer behavior has really driven this. Do you think that's one of the reasons we see them innovating in tech and being on the list?
You know, oftentimes being in the logistics space is when I go out and tell people I'm in freight, they often think about their own experiences and they're about receiving packages at their house. And this is an example of how important a lot of the innovations have been. Again, I think a lot of what we're seeing is a post-COVID cycle. It's driving a lot of innovation and investments and how people are prioritizing different companies here. Is we're looking to the next generation of our space. And it's interesting because we've seen some LTL, we've seen some parcel, we've seen some e-commerce, more so than I remember in the past.
So moving on to these coveted top 2 spots.
Before we do this,
okay, let's hear it.
The moment you do 2, people are going to start wondering about number 1.
Yeah.
So, but what's really interesting about this is just how remarkable this list is. So,
number 2 for that tease up there. Coming in at number 2, Plus. We've talked a little bit about middle mile autonomy, long haul autonomy here. They've got a driver-in solution right now. They didn't bring their truck to us this year, but they made the FreightTech 25.
They did. I mean, the autonomous business has been an industry that's attracted a lot of capital early on. It was a beneficiary of that early 2015 to 2022 venture cycle, if you will. A lot of companies in the EV sector and autonomous went public. Most of those companies are not around.
Right.
Plus has continued to make investments, and I think its business model of not trying to say we're going full autonomy, I think has been a primary beneficiary.
Yeah.
So, Kaylee, I gotta say, we're down to 1.
We're down to 1.
And we have not seen a number of names,
Some big names
that we would expect to see.
Right.
So this is a really interesting list.
So this year's winner, they're a 3-time previous winner. They have made the list every single year that it's been in its inception. I'm going to take this back so it's in the center here. Give a round of applause to this year's number 1 on the FreightTech 25, Amazon Freight.
What I think is remarkable is that Amazon, as a company that has defined so much of our lives, like my 4-year-old son was going through here and he knows the Amazon logo. It's ubiquitous in our life.
It's like Mom got another package.
And it is a company that in really over the last couple of years has made significant investments in not only its business model in terms of Amazon Freight, but also how it's positioned it in not just the minds of consumers, but this industry itself.
Right.
You know, Amazon Moves is one of the largest, if it were an independent parcel company and logistics company, would be in the top 3 in terms of logistics. And it is, the amount of packages that it manages through its network is just mind-boggling. But that's not what this is really about. It's about creating solutions of taking that infrastructure and technology and understanding and providing other companies with logistics solutions. And I think it's a remarkable testament to the business model of Amazon. And look, this is a very One of the things I think is really important about the Freight Tech list is these are folks that are deeply, deeply knowledgeable about the space. They see a lot of the activity, and just because you have a big brand does not actually matter. It's whether you actually are creating innovations that the industry and the folks that are deeply knowledgeable care about. And I think Amazon is certainly an example of that. So let's give Amazon a big round of applause for their successes. And it's exciting to see what's next for Amazon.
Absolutely. So, Becca, thank you for that. Thank you guys to HHM for
Yes.
being that independent consulting partner. Again, here's that full Freight Tech 25 list that will be up on our website as well. Share it with your friends. And honestly, I don't even know what we're going to expect next year.
This was certainly the most disrupted, talk about disruption, this is the most disrupted list I've ever seen. In fact, I didn't see it up until a couple of days ago. I think it was 2 days ago when I actually looked at it. But my team said it is a big change, a lot of changes in it. And so I think what's happening, Kaylee, is that we're so much of what's happened from that venture cycle, where the sort of changing of the sort of part of the cycle. This year has been a year of disruptions. It's been one of the most difficult years in the industry. And I think what the voters are saying is it's more of I want to see what you're doing that's new, and I want to see how you have successfully taken all of this innovation and capital and deployed it in areas that have created really solid returns and processes and businesses. And we have a much more educated set of voters this time, or at least the evolution of our voters and folks that have been even voting early on in the list have started to look at businesses different than maybe they had in the past. And again, I think that the year of disruption is really important. And so congratulations to the folks that have returned to the list, and congratulations to the new companies, many of which have never been on this list. And in fact, I had to brush up on some of it before we did, because I wanted to make sure I understood what all these fantastic things that are happening.
Well, Craig, thank you for being up here to talk about these companies. Becca, thank you guys for your involvement. Congratulations to all of those winners, all of those returners, and Amazon Freight. You're going to get that.
I do want to say one
plaque.
thing before we close. As somebody tweeted last night, who is just from the venture ecosystem, about all this freight innovation is dead. And it's not. It's just that some of the businesses that we saw during the venture cycle, the first phase of the venture cycle, is some of those businesses have worked out. You know, we didn't see Convoy, and this is going to be asked of me, is did we take Convoy out of the list? And the answer is no. And I think that's important to say is between the time that we completed the voting and the time that we released the list, Convoy did not make the top 25. I think it's the first year they didn't. But I think we're in a new cycle. I think there's a set of new technologies and new investments and a lot of excitement around the space. It's just different. We've shifted. And I think this is an opportunity for us to think about what the future represents and where we're headed.
Absolutely. That's why we're here at the Future of Freight Festival. Guys, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for
Thank you
joining
so
us up
much.
here for that.
Congratulations.
Again, big round of applause to all of our folks there.